Fine. Yeah. Last week was a week, let me tell you. I hope you're all doing really good. I hope everybody had a good Memorial Day weekend. For the few of you who are former service members, I hope you especially had a good weekend. but yeah, I was super busy this weekend. I almost feel like I didn't do anything that I should have done because of all the other stuff I was doing. If that makes sense to any of you. So, as an example, Friday, I had to get up super early, go about an hour and a half north to pick up my younger brother, then drive basically across the state, which is like 3-ish hours, to where we needed to go to take him for some like medical scans and also like see my mom for dinner, but happens to be where my mom is, so that's nice. And then back. So I was between like charging my car and some breaks, right? Like getting dinner. I saw my cousins for like 30 minutes. Um, I left my house at 8 a.m. I did not get home until 1:30 a.m. This has been like all day on the road for the most part. That was that was the start of my weekend. Then Saturday I had a thing with a bunch of friends for my alternative hobby. Is that what we want to call it? And then Sunday I went to a get together with a bunch of friends, mostly like so if you guys remember the video game that I worked on several years ago, it's the folks that made the game plus some of their friends that were in town, that my wife does like streams and stuff with. So yeah, I went to a little barbecue, which is kind of good, kind of busy, but yeah. Sid Miller, I've got good and bad news. I might not be able to make more streams because I have a job interview at my LFS. Might actually be able to getting a job after a year off. Well, first off, good luck. Hopefully it's not too hard of an interview. I would assume it's just a lot of like basic. I put this in quotation marks. Basic fish questions for most of us hobbyists, right? Just understanding like good advice to give a customer, kind of the basics of like maybe things you would have to do around a local fish store, stuff like that. But good luck, Sid. Good luck. But yeah, so I did a bunch of that. So I didn't really get much done. I'm not even covering up the empty tank with the AI art. I've decided I'll just deal with it. But yeah. So let me briefly go get like a primer on this week's topic before we dive in. It shouldn't be too long. I kind of wanted this to be like an easy topic, something simple, something informative, because we've done a lot of like product quality type stuff lately, and I'll be doing some more of that. Like this week, we'll talk about fish. I originally was not going to do like the cost of bringing in fish from distributors and stuff, because Alex, my buddy Fishery, did a great video, but there was some stuff that he missed in some really like key scenarios. So like specific to importing or specific to like really big domestic places, like Seagrass Farms would be your example of a large domestic one, not specifically Seagrass maybe, but as an example. There were some things that kind of got missed there that I wanted to talk about because a friend of mine who's in the industry was like, "Hey, you really should talk about these things since you're kind of on this kick." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's a reason to actually do the video." Now he did a good one talking with a mutual source that we know that imports a lot of fish. So great information there, and basically I'll just kind of like add on to that. Um, but yeah, so only way I'll answer your question real fast. How much money do you think I would need to spend at an LFS in order to motivate them to move about 30 to 40 minutes east so they could be closer to me. Uh, I don't think you would need to spend a lot of money. You would have to prove to them that the expense of moving would be a significant increase in overall profit. And not necessarily because of they'll get more sales. Maybe they would find a more economically affordable space, or whatever. If for some reason it was a state border change, maybe it's um, different taxes they have to pay that would end up making it more beneficial because they'd pay less tax from their business. But the likelihood of enough money to get someone to move, you'd probably have to represent something like, sorry, I had a sneeze sneak up on me. You'd probably have to represent something like 30% of their gross sales, maybe even more. And I don't think you're trying to spend that much money on fish stuff. I mean, if you are, power to you. But but yeah, I I understand that part of this question is a joke, but you know me, even joking questions I take semi-seriously because it's fun. It's fun to explore them. Let's talk about my actual topic, okay, which is white labeling, and trying to like further understand products that are in the aquarium industry. So the basics of white labeling is that, let's say Bentley opens up Bentley's Fish Products Co. Right? So Bentley's going to make, or we'll call it Bentley's Generic Box Aquatics. All right, and rather than design and manufacture my own product or engineer my own product, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to find existing products from a manufacturer. In our industry, it's most commonly China, but not always. Most of the time, though, yes. And I'm going to find what I think is the best, whether it's price point or quality, whatever that may be. And I'm gonna bring that in because I feel it is a good value to my customers or my prospective customers, maybe. So let's say we're looking at like sponge filters as an example, right? I'm gonna go get that. We talked about it, the XY380, the like most common fish sponge filter known to man that we could get for 80 cents a piece before shipping and packaging and right. Uh, there's lots of other things, but just the raw product itself costs that much. White labeling is basically taking that product, making no changes whatsoever, but slapping my company name on top of it and selling it as my product. This is extremely popular in lots of industries. As an example, right? You could have in the car industry, you could have a part that's made by a different company, but Ford orders like 10 bajillion of this part, and that's their official oil filter, and that's the Ford oil filter, but they're not the actual manufacturer. So technically, this is white labeling, right? Because they're not making any changes to it. They're just putting the packaging on it and they're selling it, or it's the specific product they want for, every Ford truck, whatever the heck it may be. The auto industry is kind of a little weird in that, but you guys understand the basics, right? So is this process a good thing for the industry? And the short answer to that is kinda. Where it's good is that companies can, as an example, let's say that a company, JC and me, could open up, find a product that they really think is good, but isn't present in a market. Let's say I'm in Canada and I can't get this particular LED light on Amazon on Canada, but I want to bring it in because I know it's good for the price and I can sell it to be really economically friendly so that newer hobbyists can find a good light at a good price, right? So I'm going to open the JC and Me company and I'm going to sell this light that I'm sourcing from Canada, but I'm not taking any changes to it whatsoever. No changes in engineering. I'm just putting it in a box with my company name on it and we're selling that bad boy. Where this can be good is that when we're looking for really economically friendly products, often the best stuff is stuff that we don't regularly see in our countries. There are major manufacturing companies in typically China, but not always, but we'll just use China as our main example here, that are making tons and tons of these things. Their cost of construction is very, very low, so it allows us, if we're buying in a amount of bulk, remember we talked about that unnegotiated price when we talked about products in the past, that allows us to bring in a lot of something relatively inexpensive, and thus, after we calculate like all our fees and things between shipping and packaging and import taxes and labor to actually go through and ship them out and making our sales and the cost of taxes and the fee that Amazon's going to charge us and all that, right? There's lots of fees. We didn't necessarily cover that in that video, but there are tons of those things. After that's all said and done, we can basically bring it in at a really low price so that we can sell like a 36-inch light, as an example, for something like $50 or $60. And that makes it so that we have this product that we think is good for the price, right? We're thinking it's a good quality for the price that we can offer to hobbyists so that they don't have to pay, $180 for a Fluval 3.0 or something like that. Vincent, so white label is OEM for us old guys. Yes, OEM is white label. White label is the more common, broad industry term. OEM tends to be more commonly used in tech or like parts manufacturer, like airplanes, cars, things like that, right? More heavy engineering industries. So like hardware for computers, OEM is still a very common term. You don't usually call it white label, but it's the same thing. And for those that don't know, that OEM is original equipment manufacturer. It's, or roughly that. It might be slightly different, but whatever, good enough. So let's talk about the bad, right? Because there is a bad to this. The bad part of it is that very often the companies doing the white labeling are unlikely, let's put it that way, to be extremely transparent about what's going on. So they will do almost everything they can to make the perception be that they actually create this product, even though they have nothing to do with its manufacture, its engineering, any of that, right? This is unfortunately really common in a number of industries where companies refuse to be transparent. And maybe that's like what the core of my topic should have been, is the importance of transparency in the industry. Because I think if you're like me, which I think most of you guys are, if our fictional company JC and Me, or Bentley's generic box company, whatever, was to go, hey, I found what I think is the best product for the price, and I'm just making it available in a way that was not easily available before, because otherwise you'd have to individually ship it in and do all this dumb nonsense. And I'm going to offer a warranty to protect you if something does happen to go wrong. But hey, I didn't manufacture this thing. I just picked what I felt is the best quality for price. I think all of us would generically go, sounds good. That level of transparency, I feel, is really important in almost every industry. In a number of different hobbies, transparency matters. And I don't think that we, consumers, would be that angry, and chat, feel free to like say the otherwise, be like, nope, anything like this, I don't want, whatever it may be. I get it. But let me know in chat if you agree or not. That as long as we know that this is the case, we're going to be pretty accepting of the company doing it. Because at least they're being upfront, like, hey, we can't possibly afford to actually manufacture all this stuff and put all these things together, etc., etc., etc. But what we can do is find what we think is the best item for its price, bring it to you, bring it to our warehouse in a massive quantity so that we can sell it to you at a good price and offer things like easy shipping, a warranty, probably better instructions, because, you know, the instructions that come with those things are they're garbage, but things like that. So, like, as an example, there are a number of products, like I think Corey mentioned this in a live stream recently, like their glue that they sell is white labeled, as an example. They literally just slap on their packaging over the top of glue, but it's super glue. It's not like you're gonna magically do big things to change super glue, right? There are tons of companies that do this kind of stuff. Haiger does this. Everything that Haiger brings in is white labeled. It's made by some other company in China. They bring it in bulk and they sell it all. None of it is stuff that they've engineered. We could go on Alibaba, Temu, whatever, and probably find every single one of their products with a different name on it. But they're offering an easy place to find a number of products. We kind of know what we're getting, and they have some semblance of a warranty that they're covering that you otherwise would not get if you ordered off of like Alibaba or Temu and got it directly, right? So there's some positives to go with it. Adam's lecture, a big problem is that the very same product sells for $19.99, $29.99, $39.99, $79.99 as you scroll through eBay, Amazon searches. Yeah, bunches of companies will sell it for completely different prices. And that's the thing is you have to decide whether you're going to gamble and whether the packaging changes to make it ship better or the warranty being offered is actually going to be honored by the company. You've got things like that. So you could have, you know, ABC company, ABD company, and ABF company. And what happens is that F will never cover a warranty for you because they don't offer one in the first place. D has a warranty, but they always put it in really bad boxes and it shows up kind of beat up or scuffed. And then C is the one that like takes a little bit more care, has better packaging, is responsive to the customer service, etc., etc. But it's all the same product. The problem is like C is charging you the higher price. Is that higher price worth the customer service, etc., etc., compared to the other companies where you know it's just like I'm coin flipping whether I'm going to be okay with this thing or not. That's kind of one of the things you have to do. I'm assuming that's kind of agent. I'm not sure how you want your screen name to be pronounced there, AGXNT. I've dabbled in a few hobbies, and this one definitely wants my money the most. The only industry I would call equally tenacious is bass fishing lure manufacturers. I mean, I think at a certain point you can figure out what I'm looking for the right word in my brain because my brain is kind of fried. What the right balance of cost to getting what you need in this hobby is. Because you don't always have to have the most expensive fancy whiz bang of each individual piece of equipment or what have you. But pets get expensive. Way is saying that like Magic the Gathering is more expensive. A lot of those like trading or collector related hobbies are very expensive. There's other hobbies out there that I would say like you want an expensive hobby, check out Warhammer. That hobby is atrocious. I just helped a friend get a bunch of Warhammer stuff for one of his armies through friends of mine because I have friends that work in certain places that can get discounts, and even with a fairly impressive discount, he was still spending like $1,000 to get like starter army in Warhammer. Like, and that's with a hefty discount. Hefty discount. Imagine that would be like us always buying the super fancy rimless tank with like the really nice filter and the nice light and all that kind of stuff. Like every time we did a new aquarium, that's what we're talking about there, right? Kind of wild. Instead of like I can buy an Aquarium on the sale for $60 for a 40-gallon breeder, and then I can get just a sponge filter and an air pump. I don't need a hang on back, right? You know, things like that. There are ways to shave cost if you need to. It just depends on what you like in the hobby. Because if you don't like sponge filters, you prefer a powered filter, or you like having a nice light because you want a really good looking, super well planted tank, then yeah, some things will cost a little bit more, unfortunately. I do think transparency is the key. You don't want the general public determining your supply chain. Upper management is bad enough. General public, oh my God, no one here, of course. Well, I mean, I think there's something to be said for your supply chain being completely controlled overseas as well. Because an example would be, as so many of us have lived through, I'm looking at my analytics. I know that I don't have very young people watching my channel. It's all those old farts, but and only a few young people. But you know, all of us lived through the pandemic, and think of how difficult it became to get a number of things that were coming in from China. It became very hard to get a hold of lights. There were big delays on all sorts of different products, whether it was like air pumps or heaters, etc., etc., etc. All these things, right? It caused massive delays or other problems. So when you're reliant on stuff, certain things also are potentially problematic. That being said, you're certainly not going to get products as cheap as you will within the United States as you would directly from China, even with all the freight and all that kind of nonsense. But yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Uh, only way. Let's make a white label company for Warhammer accessories. You know, there are people that are trying to do that with 3D printing and they got sued because Games Workshop is extremely litigious, and some of those companies completely shut down. So yeah, I'm not going to challenge Games Workshop. Not my jam. I've got other things. If I was going to go wild and crazy, that's not the company idea I would build. I would be building some software. Who would have thunk? But I have an idea in my head. I just got to get the right stuff, which basically says I either have to go reteach myself code from the ground up, because I would need that to do my code base is not like phone app development. It's Windows development, basically put. And yeah, it's a lot different. I'll write the software. You tell me the idea. Only way, if you're serious about that, we can talk. Like legitimate long phone call kind of talk. I have crazy things in my head, but yeah, I think they would help the industry. Okay, let's talk fishy things. Adam's lecture. The key is having Bentley review every Chinese white label product for. Okay, can I talk to you about something? First, Leo. Moonlight Aquatics has spotted Congo puffers. I'm aware. You should go get it. Best community puffer ever. So if I'm going to do Congo puffers, I'm going straight to Preston John. It should be noted that, like, Preston was at my house when AGA was in Seattle, and he said at any time, if I want Congo puffers, he will send me a breeding group if I actively try to breed them. And then note everything that I'm doing so that I can give him extra information. Johnny Dancefish, how's Preston doing? Haven't seen him around in a while. To my knowledge, he's been pretty busy. I haven't talked to him in probably 6 months, but I know that a couple of other fish friends have talked to him kind of recently, which probably means I need to text him. Because I have the direct bad phone with him. But he's a good guy. He's a really great guy. I miss that guy a ton, actually. I I looked at going down to Arizona to visit a friend, specifically knowing that that friend lives close to Preston, so I could spend at least a day just hanging out with Preston. It's just like as wild as that sounds. Aquarium fun. I'm a software engineer with 30 years of experience, but I only do back-end development. I wouldn't know a UI if it hit me in the face. You know, the beautiful thing about UI nowadays is that most UI is really easy to put together something simple. It's just understanding. This is maybe this is the part of me that is a like quality assurance engineer and like I just break stuff for a living. That is really good at this stuff is just understanding like what people need that is simple and easy. Because very often UIs are too complex for their own good, and they end up confusing a lot of people. And I cannot tell you the number of issues I have filed on overly complex UIs, and basically giving feedback of like, I guarantee this is what's going to happen. This is easy to be confusing. This is easy to confuse people. This flow is dumb. More detailed than that, of course. But you know, also props to you for flat out saying you're a back end engineer, as opposed to just being like I'm a full stack engineer. Because too many people say they're a full stack engineer when they're either like really specialized in either front end or back end work, and it drives me and a number of people that I have great faith and trust in crazy. Oh man. Anyway, Vincent, you crazy things in your head. Say it ain't so. Oh no, Leo 209. I have reptiles now. Too. I have a problem. Help me. Oh, Leo, your focus needs more focus, buddy. You love just diving into stuff head first, man. That's part of what I love about you, dude. You're just like, puffers seem cool. Puffers. That seems cool. Doing that. Oh man. I think on my bucket list of fish are the pike line bearers. Those are really interesting things. To me, they're almost like they get in the level of quirky to where I like pick the one quirky thing I want. And the quirky thing I love now is dojo loaches because my wife loves them. So that's kind of the quirky thing I go with. Anyway, okay. By the way, if you have questions at this point at Bentley Pasco, makes it super easy for me to see them. So, you know, do your thing. Do your thing. What do you think is the best fish for duckweed? Goldfish. Specifically shabunkins. We used to have, for those of you who remember, for a long time, I had a goldfish named Cycles. And the joke was not that he cycled tanks, but that his job was to go tank to tank in a cycle and eat all of the duckweed that ever showed up. So I would just go buy literally a dirt cheap shabunkin. I would put him in tanks and let him eat all the duckweed. And then once all the duckweed was gone, he'd stay in there for another couple weeks, just in case anything showed up, and then he'd move. And I started at the smallest tank, and as he started getting bigger and bigger, moved to the biggest tanks. The other way to deal with duckweed is really high flow at the surface of your water, because duckweed does not like flow at all, and if it's in too much movement, it will die. It will die. Aquarium fun. I irradiated my duckweed with a common feeder goldfish. Yeah. Common feeders or shabunkins, whatever you can get cheap, they are destroyers of duckweed, and they love it something fierce. We've been talking about getting goldfish for that reason, but we don't know where to get a healthy one. Well, so the question becomes, what kind of goldfish you look for? Because you don't want like the fancy, super expensive ones that would go through a breeder. You really want like cheap, common goldfish. Or like a common shabunkin. And there are places to get healthier shabunkins that aren't terribly expensive. But yeah, I'm not sure what will fit Dan's standards. So that's my 2 cents on that one. I meant eradicate. Yeah, I kind of figured that one out. After I said it too, I was just like, oh yeah, I know what he said, but I'm going to be dumb too, and that's better. We can mess up together. We can mess up together. Love my flavored water. Josiah, what are some colorful fish options for a fully planted tank that will not disturb plants and are okay with crystal red shrimp? 6.4 pH, GH4, KH0. All your tetras and a lot of your like micro rasboras are all great options. So you can do like the emerald green rasbora, that's great. Exclamation point rasboras are great. So all the like teeny tiny ones for nano tanks, perfect. You can look at like neons or cardinal tetras. White clouds do great. Although that pH might be a little soft for white clouds, they'd probably be okay. But just kind of thinking about it, you might have potentially some small issues with them. Probably not too likely, but yeah. Knife. What is your holy grail fish? Gotta play this game, huh? Gotta play this game. Okay. So there's kind of like two ways to approach this. My actual holy grail, and it's not because of what it looks like or it being excessively expensive or anything like that. It's because it's basically not in the hobby. It's a rainbow fish. In northern Queensland, Australia, in a very remote area, there is a Pasco River, spelled exactly like my last name. And within the Pasco River, there is a trifasciata rainbow fish. The Pasco River rainbow fish. It's basically not in the hobby. I've only met through a couple of groups, like one guy in Australia who was keeping it. And getting that fish shipped out of Australia is nigh impossible. And he kept it in the past. He was not actively keeping it anymore. He lost the ones he was keeping. That's like my holy grail because it shares my last name. It's fun. It's a rainbow fish. I love rainbows. And because it's not in the hobby at all, it makes it a little more interesting and special. Now, if you want to talk like something that I've had or really want to have that is more accessible in the hobby, I would probably have to go back toward keeping zebra plecos again. I just really like the L46. I also like the true 173, not the 173B. They're both just beautiful, beautiful fish. The 173 is a little harder to get and more expensive, but the L46, I had a colony for a long while. I absolutely love them. And I want to have them again just because I love that fish dearly. Now, the last, I guess, holy grail. This is harder to get because it should still be in the hobby, but I'm not sure if the breeders that used to have it still have it. So you guys know that my guppy comes from the Blue Hawaiian Moscow, comes from Luke Roebuck, right? And he had this other strain, and I'm trying to see if I've got the picture lying around, but of course I don't, called a magenta bicolor. And it's like the most magenta guppy I've ever seen in my life. Let me see if I can look it up. Sometimes it's hard to type around my microphone. I won't lie. There it is. This is the picture I want. I will show you guys this fish because it is something else. So I like do weird poses around my microphone to save pictures. There it is. Go to this. Go into them pictures I just saved. Where you be? There it is. Boop. Let me make an adjustment here. This. That is a good looking guppy. Really good looking guppy. I have been not aggressively looking for this fish, but I have been kind of casually looking for this fish for 6 years now. Can't find it. I have no clue if I can find this thing, but I will keep looking. I'm trying to get in touch with some people, but I keep getting sidetracked, and then I forget for like 6 months, and then I remember again, and then I get sidetracked again. It's known, so it's a strain that Luke Roebuck used to keep called the magenta bicolor. Luke's red bicolor magenta. Excuse me. Luke's like super old website that is still up because it's an old tripod website for us oldie moldies who remember tripod. You can still see pictures of it right there, but Mr. Roebuck's been dead for 10 years now, 11, and nobody's still selling his guppies. So I have to find people, probably IFGA members, because he was a big IFGA guy, who still have some of his fish. Yeah, that's like GeoCities era. Yeah, buddy, it's old school tripod websites, man. You sell guppies off this bad boy. But this is it, man. This is the other holy grail. Now there's lots of cool fish that come out of parts of the world that are really hard. It's so sad what happened to Scott Williams, IFGA president. I haven't heard. I do know that for those of you who have gone to a reasonable number of conventions, there's been 2 people that just passed away. Patty, geez, why do I not remember Patty's last name right now? Easy way to find out. Let me go to. So there's Clay, who like Scotty knew really well, and then also Patty was like Bower, I think was her last name. It's a B. I know that. But Patty was wonderful, always big smile. I got to interact with her a couple of times at a couple different conventions, and she recently passed away. Power, thank you, Alison. I probably just pronounced that terribly because my brain is the fried. But yeah, Patty just passed away. She was fighting cancer. It's really, really unfortunate. She was a wonderful lady. I got an opportunity to meet her at both, I think it was both Triple Crown and Keystone Clash. And I know she was a Keystone Clash because I was in a circle outside talking with her and a number of other people. Yeah, Clay Crawford. Thank you. I didn't have Clay's last name. But yeah, we lost a couple of like locals that were pretty good people. Pretty good people. Scott Williams had a benign brain tumor that had to be surgically removed because it was pressing against his spine. Now he's in a wheelchair and can't even open his eyelids on his own. So, yeah. Yeah. Oof. That's rough. That's so rough. Especially when you're like a really dedicated hobbyist, and I imagine the other members of his family are not. You gotta hope that some amount of rehab could help, but yeah. Oh, I don't doubt that the IFGA president had the best guppies. That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, like, yeah. This is a great question. Mansing, would a $35 price difference between the Fluval Plant 3.0 and the Aquarium Co-op Lite be worth it for the average hobbyist? Rakuten has a 20% cash back at PetSmart this weekend. Okay, so for those of you who's Rakuten, you can get 20% cash back at PetSmart this weekend. That's kind of awesome. Let me give you, I mean, like, Aquarium Fund kind of mentioned this, but let me go through the benefits back and forth. For me, I would take the Fluval, but that's because I love being able to change each individual spectrum on the light, and I'm like a psycho for light control, so I love playing with my light settings. Even the ones when I found a setting I really, really love, still at certain times of the year I adjust it. Like if I have algae outbreaks, I have a massive hair algae outbreak in a tank right now. I dial everything down. I adjust it. I mess with it. I play with things to help mitigate my problems so that I can roll back to what is normal in that aquarium for myself. It's a little harder to do that in the aquarium co-op light because it's just big 10% jumps and it's all lights at once, not 1% per individual light jumps, right? So there's a lot of control that you can get. Now, if you don't like an app-controlled light, which is what the FluVol is, you're going to be better off with the aquarium co-op light because it's just a simple inline controller. The aquarium co-op light, you can beat the Hades out of that thing, and it will keep going. FluVol light is pretty tough, but I don't see people like literally throwing it on the ground. And how likely are you to throw a light on the freaking ground? You know what I'm saying? Like some of these things are a little overhyped, unnecessary, whatever. The last thing that I will say to you is this, and this could matter. The way the co-op light is designed, it has feet very similar to 3.0, but not the exact same feet. So when it sits on a tank, it sits very low to the top of the aquarium. The FluVol light, because of the way it's designed, there is this absolute beast on Etsy who has created 3D printed risers that click in to the feet of the FluVol 3.0. They will not click into an aquarium co-op light. So if you don't like it directly on top of the tank, you can buy these risers for not a lot of money. I think it's like 16 bucks. I mean, it was cheap last I looked. Hold on. I will give you exact things here. I can look this up. We have the power. Here we go. Here's the one I like right here. I love this. I have a bunch of these at different sizes because I want to try a bunch of them. I will put them directly into the chat because they are fantastic. And I love them to death. Oh, it's like literally too long. Okay, hold on. We can... There's got to be a... Come on, is there not like a way to like... Okay. We're going to go make a tiny URL out of this thing. Because apparently... Enter your atrociously long link here. Bam, got it. Why Etsy? Why? Why do you do this? Why do you have the longest names known to man? Here you go. Direct link to it. They have a couple different sizes. They're fantastic. They click right in. And because of the way they're designed, they don't grab both sides of a lip of a tank. They just go on the outside. But they use weight to balance really, really well. They just sit there rock solid. I have them on a bunch of my 40 breeders. Love them. I have them at different sizes too. I've got one that's only like an inch. I've got them 2 inches. I've got them 3 inches. I've tried a bunch of different variations to see how I like them. And the short answer is I like all of them. And I haven't tried some of like the really biggest ones. I think they go up to like 5 inches. Yeah, 5 inches. But they're great. And this is if you don't want it directly on top of your tank, there's people on Etsy that make stuff for this. I haven't seen anything for the aquarium co-op light. So a little extra benefit there. Yeah, and there is one caveat. There isn't like a perfectly set one for either a 20 long or a 29 gallon, where the aquarium co-op does have the exact right size for that. So it also depends on your size of tank. Where's the best place to buy golden pearl fry food from? Your fish stuff. Alishon pointed that out, but yeah. See, apparently no size doesn't matter. There's so many jokes I agree with that. So many. I got risers for the aquarium co-op light from Etsy. Ooh, Mike, really? Okay, now I'm gonna go look these up. Because I wonder if the same person makes them. Should be hilarious. Light riser. Come on, one time. Yeah, looks like it's the same person, which is great because they make a great product. Do they click in the same way? Oh, I see. He's got a different clicking mechanism to lock in there, but there you go. All right, here's the ones for the Aquarium Co-op light. 1 minute. We can do it. Gotta go tiny URL again because these are crazy long. There's the one for the Aquarium Co-op light. Easy peasy. So you could get a riser for either one if you want one. That's great. I'm glad that the same person has made one for another thing. I gave them some love in a video like a year and a half ago, I think. It's a while ago, but yeah. Risers are your best friend. Use them. But yeah, hopefully that helps. I personally prefer the Fluval light. That's me. But I like I said, I'm a psycho for control. So that should tell you all you need to know about me. When it comes to my lights, that's when I'm a micromanager. When it comes to all of the rest of my life, not so much a micromanager. Josiah, what's your thoughts on surface skimmers and a high-tech planet tank? I bought a Fluval SK400 from Ken's for $16.49 because why not? I like surface skimmers if you're trying to keep more minimal flow at the top. I like surface skimmers to help break up the film that can potentially the protein film that can potentially form at the top of your water. So if you're not using like heavy water movement at the surface, I like skimmers. Where I don't like skimmers is if you're dealing with plants that like to shed leaves regularly, it can be really easy to get them plugged up and clogged up with a bunch of gunk because those things will naturally float, and they're less likely to get into like a lower intake. But if you're paying enough attention, it's really easy to clean your skimmer. So that's nice. There are plenty of like skimmer attachments that are terrible, but you're talking about a more dedicated like in-tank skimmer filter, and those things can be great. Oh, I see how it is, Dr. Maz. What is your thoughts on goldfish and discus together? It feels like they're at way different temperatures than would be healthy for both. I'm sure someone has discus that are more low temperature tolerant. They don't want to be at like 86 freaking degrees or whatever. And they've got goldfish that also like warmer temps. But from my menial understanding of both fish, they prefer much different temperatures. So, I see you, Dr. Mez. I see you trying to mess with me. That's okay. I respect it. Matt Stewart, what, in your opinion, are the pros and cons of spray bars? One con I've noticed is poor CO2 dispersion, but otherwise, it's been great for my angels. I really like spray bars. I kind of wish spray bars were slightly more common as like a default piece of equipment with more canister filters. And the reason why I like them is because of that dispersion, right? Because the water flow is dispersed in a wider blade, you have less concentrated flow, but you're creating more overall surface agitation. And I actually like surface agitation, even when I'm injecting CO2. Where I would solve the problem of CO2 dispersion is I would use an inline CO2 reactor so that the actual outflow is just dispersing more and more CO2 no matter what. Now, if you're talking about because that dispersed spray bar has less power and it's not pushing water as far down the tank, that's just a matter of putting your intake on the complete opposite side as your spray bar so that it's naturally forcing water flow to go all the way across. And then over time, throughout the process of a day, as your CO2 is mixing into the entirety of your aquarium, you're going to get reasonable distribution. Yeah, hope that helps. I like them. I like them a lot. So the tank that brother-in-law James and I are doing, which he's finally got most of his rocks in there. I've got to like change a few things based on some things he told me, but it's mostly like smaller detail rocks that I have kind of squirreled away that aren't in the obvious place for him that I'm going to make some adjustments with. And then we'll start like actually like planting that thing, getting it full of water, et cetera, et cetera. We're using the spray bar on the FX2 with that tank. So I'm going to have a 40-gallon breeder using a spray bar on an FX2 as your filtration power source, if you will. And I like it because then it's spreading out that water, it won't cause too much water movement in one spot, but instead will give me a nice even distribution across the entire tank and kind of give it a like pseudo lazy river flow thing going on. And that makes me very happy because I like certain amounts of flow in my tanks. And we're going to be doing this for that's actually going to change. So like we were originally going to move the 3 Leopoldite angels that are not the breeding pair out, but when the male of my pair died, the female like was not long behind it. And which I've heard from a few angelfish people I trust that this can happen more often than one might think, is that when they lose their kind of mated pair, they just stop eating. They basically go into a serious depression and stop doing all the things they need to do to survive. And I lost her, so now I just have 3 boys that are all kind of jerks, and they could probably just stay in the same tank, and we could put something completely different in that tank down below. We're trying to figure that part out. We haven't figured out what we want to put in the tank, but we are going to set it up and get it going, because now that he's got all his rocks in there, we can start getting it full of water and planting it and all that kind of fun stuff. And that's kind of my that's my next goal through the rest of like this week, is to do the last of the rock work, get it full of water, and get it planted. With at least the basic plants we have so far. You guys have probably seen in some of the videos in the background. There's like armies of pots of plants sitting in fallen forest right now. Those are all for brother-in-law James and my wife's tanks that are upcoming. It's just splitting them between them. So yeah. You were always asking about this. Coralworks. 1 second. I'm going to get Tony Adams first. So first, you're not alone on my love for the Fluval Light because of control, yet chaos the rest of my life. Like micromanaging psycho for your aquarium light. Yeah, I'm pretty lazy about everything else, though. Good to see you with me, Tony. I'm also in the process of trying to change to the cybersecurity field, and pen tester seems like where I want to be. I feel like there's a pattern going on here. I have done a very minor amount of security test work, not true like pen test work, but like a lot of 2-factor authorization testing, and it was interesting. Let me put it that way. I think the nature of what I was testing wasn't as in depth as it could have been, so it was kind of a little soul crushing. But like actual good pen tester work is really cool, and it's a really interesting part of the test field. I probably would love to do something like that, but I think it's such a different skill set compared to a lot of things that I do naturally now that it would be like starting completely over. So I'll probably just stick to what I'm good at. That's what I'm saying. All right, Coralworks. What are your thoughts on reverse flow under gravel with a canister or sump? How many months do we have to wait for you to tear down the anoxic stank tank? So speaking of, that thing is struggling to establish its initial bacterial colony and actually tackle the 2 parts of ammonia that are sitting in it. So I don't know whether it's my Fritzzyme 7 that sucks or what, but it's taking its sweet time and driving me slightly crazy. No, it doesn't smell. It doesn't smell at all. But it's just a matter of getting it done. As far as like reverse flow, I don't have any experience in it. And the only time I've really ever seen it was usually in saltwater applications. So I can't really speak to it other than like, why? Just why? If you really want to, do it. Every form of filtration is effective. All of them. All of them. You could filter through the last little tiny sip of whiskey I have in this glass is sitting here waiting for me to finish stream. Right? Somehow it will work. Like, that's kind of the magic of biology, is that those bacteria will find a way. No matter how you're running your water, whether you're going through the gravel's the last point, whether you're going through a sponge, a box, a power head, of this, of that. Like, you could have a Rube Goldberg machine where it's like, okay, I've got a sponge intake that goes into a hang on back that then pumps everything into this little tray that goes downhill out away from the tank, and it drips into a special custom-built inlet for my canister filter. And then that pumps over into this sump, and now that sump pumps up above it into a trickle filter, and then that goes all the way through my reverse osmosis system. You can do some dumb, insane, inane Rube Goldberg nonsense. In the end, here's what's going to happen. Beneficial bacteria will find a place to colonize, and deal with your ammonia and nitrite. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, and it might very well be the lowest maintenance setup. I think undergravels are pretty low maintenance too. Like, very fun. Okay, why isn't that a Glencairn glass? I have Glencairns. So this is... Okay, you're good at... Tangent. Fish people, I'm sorry. We're going to whiskey tangent. I know. This is like an alteration of a Glencairn that was designed by Bourbon Real Talk, if you're familiar with them, that has, it's designed for higher proof bourbon. So if you're drinking like barrel proof and cask strength stuff, which this is what this is, it's a tiny amount of a Wilderness Trail wheated bourbon at barrel proof. It's a little bit better for nosing those particular like very high proof bourbons without like blowing your nose out with the ethanol. Isn't that just a snifter? It's technically, so it is close to a snifter, but it is an alteration. It's their design, blah, 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 blah. But basically put, it's because the Glencairn company are kind of persnickety butts, they made their own version of a Glencairn that is kind of a cross between a Glencairn and a snifter. I have all sorts of, I have a bunch of different glassware. It just depends on what I feel like. This just happened to be like the closest to me when I was pouring this out, like 3 hours ago. I have very, very slowly been sipping this. And there's probably like 2 sips left in that. Anyway, yeah, that's why. Okay. I saw something else I was going to say. You don't want to squeeze out a sponge filter into the anoxic tank. Okay, so let me answer that, and then I want to answer Neo Veritas' question as well. I am trying to kickstart the tank without any potential influence from other tanks, fish, or plants. In theory, I should just go squeeze out a sponge, put some filter gravy in there, and let it do its thing, right? I've been trying as part of my experiment and monitoring it to do it completely from scratch so that I can say that there's no influence from any other system, just purely the anoxic design to do its work. I'm basically trying to limit and or control variables by making it as like dead on as possible. With that being said, if this continues for about another week and I don't see any progress, I'm just going to squeeze out a sponge I've got. And I'm going to stop trying that hard. And that'll be in the results, right? I've been keeping like a Google Sheets that's all my test work. And yeah, needless to say, I've been driving myself a little crazy. What else is new, right? Okay. Neo Veritas. Do you think dropsy is systemic in natural, heavily planted, no water change aquariums? Do I think dropsy is systemic in a planted, no water change? I'm assuming you're top off only. Good question. Let me think about that for a second. The problem is that most of the time when we encounter dropsy in a fish, it is a result of a different problem. Dropsy isn't the problem. Usually it's some kind of other bacterial infection or some other issue, almost always bacterial, right? But some other problem to where the fish is having some semblance of biological failure occurring to the point in which dropsy then occurs. Dropsy is usually a sign of a different problem and not the problem itself. And that's where that makes your question both very interesting and complicated at the same time, because is it systemic? No. I think you have potentially, if you're encountering more than a singular case of dropsy in that heavily planted tank with no water changes, you could be instead creating some other issue that maybe is difficult to test for, or maybe it's been a long-standing, slow progression toward a negative health-impacting issue that we're not realizing because it was such a slow build. And my example of that would be, let us say that over time, the carbonate hardness in your tank has slowly been consumed because we're really not doing full water changes. And then what's happening is the water is beginning to acidify more and more, aka that pH is dropping. And the fish in question, the ones that are dealing with dropsy, have significant issues as the water acidifies more. Because maybe they need more higher pH, more alkaline water, right? Is that the exact answer? No. But it's an example of what could happen over a very slow period of time. And we could be so used to everything just being rock solid, and we look at a tank and it looks good, and we're, I don't need to test my water. I don't need to test this. I don't need to look at my temperatures, because maybe it's summer and temperatures are getting higher, and the higher the temperature goes, the more likely bacterial issues can surface, and then that can lead to something like dropsy. Maybe we're ignoring some of those things because we've gotten to a state of where we have that crutch of that heavily planted aquarium that in theory should be able to handle the no water change, big quotation marks, really, really well. So if you are encountering dropsy, Neo Veritas, in more than a singular fish, in a particular system, this is where I would do a really wide gambit of testing. I would look at my temperatures, I would look at my pH, GH, KH. Of course, you're going to look at ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, because you never know, something might spike on you out of nowhere. And then you've got to kind of like reverse engineer where the problem came from. But more than likely, your bigger problems are going to be like KH, pH, temperature. Those are the more likely things to swing in a tank where we just kind of set into a rhythm. And then we have some semblance of seasonal change over time or some other kind of change in the room, whatever it may be. Maybe it's an equipment issue. Maybe our heater seems like it's doing just fine, but it's actually stuck on and we don't have a temperature controller on it. Whatever. There's lots of variables to this, right? And it's trying to understand what's going on first and clearing your mind, because you might tell yourself like, oh, my water parameters have always been good. Test it anyway. But look at all the other things. And my example to you would be, there was a while where I was dealing with problems in one of my tanks. And I looked at everything but the temperature. And I was testing and I was doing big water changes, all this stuff. And I couldn't seem to figure out why I was dealing with problems in some of my fish, right? I wasn't losing like everything, but I just kept having like one would run into this problem. And it seemed kind of like it should be bacterial, but I'd run lots of medicine and I tried all this and I tried that. And over time, lose that fish. And then another one would start to kind of falter off. This happened a long time with my Kochu tetras. I'm testing water. I'm doing water changes. I've got all these beautiful, healthy plants. Like, I'm not dealing with big amounts of algae. How can something really be going wrong? It was summer. And so, like, when I'm putting my hands in the tank, I noticed that, like, the water feels warm, but, like, yeah, this is the one closest to the window. It's going to feel a little warmer. I just kind of put it out of my head. Then I finally decided, like, let me actually check the temperature on this tank. It was hot. Hot for that tank. Hot. And what I had discovered is the heater Thankfully, it was set very low, but it had very recently stuck on. And it had been in like a stuck on position, but never got too hot because of the way that I kept my room, and it was a fairly low wattage heater in a 40-gallon breeder. It was only like 50 watts. A little baby heater. So it wasn't cooking the fish, but it was getting it just hot enough to mess with them, to impact them, to stress them. And as more and more stress occurs, slowly but surely, one fish out of the bunch, maybe even two at a time, would encounter an issue. Because as the stress piled on, then their immune system's weakened. And then someone encounters an issue. And sometimes we just assume that like X thing is doing just okay. And turns out that's not the case, right? And we'll overlook things all the time. So that would be the thing I would say to you. Kind of a long way to approach that. Only way, I filter my water by shipping it to Bentley, and he ships me new water to put back into my tank. Best filtration system ever. Could you imagine going through that level of work for fresh water? Good Lord. Oh, man. Bentley, when's the last time you bought new fish, and what did you buy? A month ago. Because a friend of mine had to drop off a bunch of fish at a store, and I went and bought them. And so I picked up some extra running rivers to kind of bulk out my colony that's getting a little older. And then he had some Glossolepis multisquamata that he turned in, and I bought them to put them in one of my tanks just for my own enjoyment. I'm not trying to breed them. They don't have their own tank. They're in with a couple older, kind of like the new retirement tank, which is where the dojo loach is. And they're just jetting around in there with their big raggedy fins, looking all cool, being all red, their bright red eyes and stuff. Just cool fish. But yeah, those would be the most recent fish I bought. I bought some extra running river rainbows because I love that fish to death. And I bought a few Glossolepis multisquamata, the red dragon rainbow, just to be in my own enjoyment. Fish, fish, fish. I'm a retired veteran. Well, sir, thank you. Thank you for your service. I hope you had a fantastic Memorial Day. I've spent a little time with some friends who are veterans. It was great. Have you done a video on your plant nemesis? I've talked about it in some of my plant tip videos, but not specifically a video on specific plant nemesis. Nemesis? I like messing with that word. I can't help it. But yeah. Yeah. Only way, my friend is obsessed with Glossolepis multisquamata and trying really hard to get some. I know that Dan's Fish has brought them in multiple times, and I imagine at some point they will have them again. So yeah. Yeah. That'd be where I'd point him, is Dan. I'm sure Johnny could tell you if they know if they're coming in anytime soon. I love your channel, but I'm a quiet watcher. Hey man, quiet watching is all I ask for. You don't have to do anything else by that. By doing that, you help out every one of us small crazy idiots on the internet. Watching, you're giving us your time. Your time is the most precious thing you actually have. And the fact that you're giving some of that to some weirdo on the internet who likes to talk about fish, I appreciate you. Because I'm pretty thrifty with my time nowadays. There's lots of places I used to give my time that don't get my time anymore. But yeah. All right, gang. That's going to do it for this week. I will be back next week. Like I said, this week, this Saturday, we'll have a video on like fish pricing when you're talking about like importing versus local distribution, aka the old school model of how local fish stores got their fish, not the way that, like, say, a wonderful company like Dan's Fish does it. But we'll talk a little bit about that and some of the things that are kind of folded into the price of the fish we buy that we may not think about, realize that like your local fish stores and your distributors and those end up having to pay, and why the price of fish from a farm might seem extremely cheap, but that's actually not how much the fish costs at the end of the road when it gets to us, and understanding like why things are the way they are. So that should be a really fun video this weekend. And then hopefully soon we'll have a fish store tour, as long as the guy I'm talking with is good to go. We were trying to get that taken care of. We'll go to see Eurofish, my friend Peter, which is a really, really cool little shop that specializes in like live bears and discus especially, but he's got a few other like cool oddball things that he carries. And yeah, should all be really fun. We'll be back here next week for another live stream. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your week. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay awesome.